Hello, this is Michael. Welcome to week 6, which is going to be about navigation and verbs. But first, let me just go through where we were this week was starting to really think about what our content contains. I think many of you have finally realized and are trying to understand how do you expand that data to be about something bigger. And as you might realize that data is, in a sense, the filing cabinet, or a database is a filing cabinet. You can put anything you want in it. In this case, you started with a concept, and maybe you're learning to expand that concept or to bring more data into that concept so that you can find better ways to organize. So as you might have seen, we're talking about idiosyncratic ways of organizing things, but now you're going to think about how to make this into knowledge. So we're going to go higher up. And getting it to be knowledge is going to take us some time. So we got a next few weeks working on this. I really enjoyed, I hope you enjoyed as well, the thought exercises. So number one was about keywords. And while we did give it a very short amount of our intention, one thing that we should be aware of is that our content, either in the HTML page itself, but is usually read by another computer. How do computers read things? Well, computers look for and are much more able to understand unique items than they are generic items. So one thing, even though I think the whole course could be about this particular topic, and I do apologize, I know we move very, very quickly in this course. But if you ever think of, and maybe many of you have or have not, if you're purchasing words, for example, AdWords on Google, the more unique the word, the lower the cost. So this was thinking about your content from another computer's point of view. And then we needed to say, well, how can we get this into some very small bucket? So I think many of you did well in talking about all the different parameters. That's very good. That's your job in IA, is to understand all the permutations. But looking at it and saying, well, is there a bigger picture? And I do know that my assignment early on said, oh, you only need half a dozen records, but I hope that you are able to see that you really need to sort of think about there being thousands upon thousands of records in order to do this higher level work. And many of you, I think, are in good shape. If you aren't, please contact me. Maybe we can help pivot. But as I said, even then, I wouldn't get too concerned because the goal of this class, of course, is to be thoughtful and to learn these techniques, not necessarily to be completely 100% ready to launch your product to others. So I hope you also enjoyed that. I do hope to give you all very individual attention, and I think all the discussions that we've had together really clicked with me as the reason I enjoy teaching this course online, that I can understand where you're at and hopefully guide you in order to expand some of your concepts about what we're doing. So this was a fun week for me, and thank you for everyone and your participation. Let's go to week 6. So as with everything, it is to start with the reading in Canvas, which I'm not going to show, but just go over there and take a look at that, because we're talking about movement and verbs. So the words that you've used to define your taxonomy are definitely going to be helpful words when it comes to this concept of navigation. So I think everyone knows what navigation is. This week we're going to do it. We're going to try to understand how do we organize our content into different hierarchies and layers. So you might start at the top. We can work on wording. How do you, there's some wording concepts that we put at the top that we can talk about. Again, everything this week is about doing. So you're going to use the work from last week, but maybe this is where we get to flesh it out. So we're going to learn a little bit about navigation patterns, so that I think may help in terms of volume, because we don't have an infinite amount of space. I would like you to each pick one of these and find a website that uses that. I think it's not going to be as hard as it sounds, because they give you examples in this article. But anyway, you can find another example if you like. Some are fairly easy, so the people that contribute early get a real advantage this week. Some of them might be a little harder to find. And then what I want to do is to have you do I'm going to call it a sitemap, but really this is about a hierarchy. So my sitemap here, if you looked last week, there's some concepts that came up in the taxonomy, such as Oriental is a word that is pretty well known or understood within perfumery to describe a certain range of scents. You can think of it as things that are being spicy and or let's just call it oriental, exotic. And those words and those unique phrases were something you guys explored last week. So in this case, I've got a sitemap here. So we talk at the top whether I want to find an ingredient. I'm going to do it by smell, which I think is going to be the easiest, perhaps. Sometimes people want to know how it's manufactured. So I'm going to say there's natural scents, there's man-made scents. And of course, there's always the need to maybe just find it by its name or its chemical name. So where I want to focus is by smell, and that has these 4 different categories. There's floral, oriental, woods, and green. This is the world of smells. So this is my taxonomy again. I could decide where to put this. I think it might be a little bit, we haven't designed anything yet, but I want to make sure that we're doing all the thought processes before we start to commit things to visuals. Under floral, there's soft floral, oriental floral, fruity floral. So there's this kind of idea that they start to mix and match a little bit. You can see these across here. And then by selecting one of these, you would get an ingredient list, or the, let's call it a set of examples that we will sooner or later visualize. But right now we're going to focus on how do you get there. Natural man-made also has the same kind of thing going. So hopefully this example gives you a feel for what I'm looking for this week. If you're curious about how things work in terms of assignments, you will turn in, this will be your first part of a deliverable that will have 3 parts. Each part really builds upon each other, so my hope is we'll talk through these things, we'll help each other understand whether we're getting our point across. We might rearrange things, that's why I'm doing this in Mural, but you're welcome to do it in a drawing program, anything works as long as you post a picture here. I will ask one favor: if you do change your mind or change based on your on feedback, you may want to actually change the thing that you post as well. I mean, the thing is that there's no reason to go with your first attempt. If we keep iterating through those, it's better to just throw away the old attempts, throw them in a wastebasket, and add the new ones so that we're all looking at the most recent thinking. We'll see how that works. Again, every class is sort of a work in progress as to how this works and helps each other. So that's week 6. Look forward again to your contribution.